I'm Sabrina Ward, 29 years old. I walked into my mom's birthday party carrying hope for warmth, maybe even a chance to finally mend the wounds that had scarred our family for years. But instead of kindness, I was struck with something far worse than a slap. It came in the form of words sharp and cutting, meant to shatter me. My father stood up, his voice ice cold and heavy with finality echoing through the crowded room. "I don't want you or that unwanted child in this family. You're dead to me and out of the will." The room froze. Silence filled the air as every pair of eyes turned toward me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply looked back, my heart pounding like a drum, and made a choice. Without saying a word, I set my gift down on the table and walked out of the party. An hour later, my phone lit up with call after call. The very people who had cast me aside now sounded frantic, their voices trembling, begging me to return. But I didn't. I answered just once, and with two simple words, I ended it. Too late. In that moment, I realized something important. I was no longer the weak one, no longer the daughter they thought they could break. Walking away wasn't defeat. It was freedom. It was finally choosing myself over their cruelty. If you were pushed away by your own family in front of everyone, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story. 2 years ago, my life in Salt Lake City felt full of promise. I was 27, thriving as an event planner, orchestrating weddings and galas, with a knack for turning chaos into elegance. My days buzzed with vendor calls, venue tours, and client meetings, but I loved the rush. One spring evening at a charity fundraiser I had organized for a local food bank, I met Ethan. He was a freelance chef serving up gourmet sliders with a quiet confidence that caught my eye. We clicked over a shared love for late-night jazz and bad puns, trading stories until the event wrapped. By the end of the night, he'd scribbled his number on a napkin, and I knew this was different. Ethan wasn't like the polished men my parents, Jeffrey, a retired lawyer, and Susan, who ran a small real estate firm, wanted for me. They had clear expectations, a husband with a corner office, not a chef hustling gigs. They never said it outright, but their tight smiles and pointed questions about Ethan's career prospects spoke volumes. My younger sister Lindsay wasn't much better. At 24, she was chasing a freelance interior design career, but somehow thought Ethan's path was unstable. Their judgment stung, but I brushed it off. Ethan made me laugh, grounded me in ways they never could. What kept me steady was the memory of my grandfather. He'd passed when I was 16, but his lessons stuck. He was a self-made man, starting as a carpenter before building a small construction firm. He'd sit me on his knee, telling stories of grit and independence, saying, "Sabrina, never let anyone define your worth." One summer when I was 12, we built a birdhouse together in his backyard workshop. As we sanded the wood, he hinted at a big gift for when I'd start my own family. "It'll be there when you need it most," he said, his eyes twinkling. I didn't press him, thinking it was just another of his cryptic promises. But his words lingered, a quiet anchor in my heart. My parents, though, saw my choices as rebellion. When I brought Ethan to a family dinner 6 months after we met, the air was thick with tension. My father grilled him about his income, his plans, his lack of stability. My mother chimed in, suggesting I meet her friend's son, a promising accountant. Lindsay smirked, muttering about how chefs never make it big. Ethan stayed polite, squeezing my hand under the table, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. I defended him, saying he's building something real, just like I am. My father scoffed. "Real? You're throwing away your future." That night, lying awake, I replayed my grandfather's words. He'd always believed in me, unlike my family's constant need to control. His talk of a big gift felt more significant now, like a puzzle piece I couldn't yet place. I didn't know what it was, but deep down I sensed my parents were keeping something from me. Ethan, unaware of their schemes, became my refuge. We spent evenings cooking together, dreaming of a life free from their judgment. Over the next year, their disapproval only grew sharper. My mother called Ethan a phase, urging me to aim higher. Lindsay texted me articles about reliable careers, implying Ethan wasn't enough. My father even suggested I move back home to rethink my priorities. Their words echoed the opposite of my grandfather's wisdom. He'd taught me to carve my own path to value heart over status. I clung to that even as their pressure mounted. Ethan and I had been together for a year, and their disapproval of his freelance chef career had grown sharper. My parents never missed a chance to criticize. At a family barbecue, my father cornered Ethan, his tone biting. "Still chasing catering gigs. You need a real plan." My mother added, "Sabrina deserves someone with ambition." Lindsay smirked, whispering to me, "He's fun, but he's not serious money." I pushed back, saying, "Ethan's building a life we love." Their eye rolls told me they didn't care. One October evening, Ethan changed my world. In his cozy apartment over a dinner of his signature risotto, he dropped to one knee holding a silver ring he'd saved for months. "Sabrina, you're my everything," he said, eyes shining. "Will you marry me?" I nodded, tears spilling, and we spent the night planning a simple wedding, dreaming of a future free from their expectations. But sharing the news with my family was a hurdle I dreaded. I invited them to dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, hoping to ease them into it. When I showed the ring, my mother's face soured. "This is reckless." "Sabrina," she snapped, "he can't support a family." My father leaned in, his voice cold. "You're wasting your potential on a dreamer." Lindsay scoffed, "You're choosing a nobody over stability." I gripped Ethan's hand, my voice firm. "I choose him because he's real." Their silence stung more than their words. Their attacks didn't stop. My mother emailed me resumes of better men, doctors, executives. My father called, warning I'd regret tying myself to a failure. Lindsay texted snarky comments about Ethan's unsteady income. I clung to my grandfather's lessons of independence, but their relentless judgment shook me, making me question if I could stand up to them forever. Then a quiet morning changed everything. A pregnancy test showed 2 lines. I told Ethan first, and his joy was electric, his arms wrapping me in a future we'd build together. We decided to keep it private for now, savoring the secret as we planned our next steps. I hoped this could be the news to bridge the gap with my family, but I wasn't ready to tell them yet, not after their venom. Days later, a chance meeting flipped my world again. I ran into Mr. Harold Grayson, my grandfather's lawyer, at a downtown cafe. He'd always been kind, but today, his eyes held concern. "Sabrina," he said carefully, "your grandfather left a trust for you, meant for when you start a family. Your parents control it, but they haven't been honest." My heart pounded. The big gift he'd mentioned when I was 12 wasn't just a story. "Why tell me now?" I asked. He frowned. "I've seen how they treat you. You deserve to know." I left the cafe, my mind racing. I tested the waters with my mother, asking if she knew about any inheritance. She deflected, saying, "Don't chase old dreams." My father was curt. "Focus on your life, not fantasies." Lindsay's nervous giggle when I asked her confirmed my suspicions. They were hiding something, a trust, a fortune, maybe my future. I had no proof yet, but the pieces were falling into place. I wasn't just fighting for Ethan or our dreams anymore. I was fighting for what was mine. That morning, the truth about my grandfather's legacy changed everything. I sat across from Mr. Grayson in his austere Salt Lake City office, the weight of his words settling like a stone in my chest. "Your grandfather left you a trust fund, $1 million. He said, his tone grave but steady. "It activates when you have a child, but your parents have controlled it since his death." My breath caught the memory of his big gift from my childhood flooding back, not a childish fantasy, but a hidden truth. "Why tell me now?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Mr. Grayson leaned forward, his eyes kind but resolute. "You're starting a family, Sabrina. It's your right to know what they've kept from you." I left his office, my mind churning with betrayal, anger, and a fierce determination to face my parents tonight at my mother's birthday party. All afternoon I wrestled with my emotions. The secret of my pregnancy shared only with Ethan felt like a fragile hope against their relentless disapproval of our engagement. I wanted to believe that announcing our child could soften their hearts, bridge the chasm between us. But Mr. Grayson's revelation had shifted something deeper. My parents weren't just rejecting Ethan, they were guarding a fortune meant for me controlling my future. In my apartment, I prepared a small gift, a carefully wrapped package that held my defiance. I didn't know if I'd have the strength to leave it, but it felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. As evening fell, Ethan and I arrived at my parents' sprawling home, the backyard aglow with fairy lights strung across towering pines. Tables draped in white linen groaned under silver trays of canapes and flutes of champagne, the air humming with the chatter of guests in tailored suits and shimmering dresses. My mother stood at the center, radiant in a deep blue gown, her smile a polished mask as she accepted compliments. My father lingered nearby, his commanding presence drawing eyes, his gaze sharpening when it landed on me. Lindsay weaved through the crowd, her laughter bright, but her eyes cold as they flicked toward Ethan. His hand in mine was my anchor, his quiet strength steadying my racing pulse. The party pulsed with life, but tension coiled inside me. I waited for the right moment, my fingers brushing the gift in my purse, its weight a reminder of the line I was about to draw. During a lull as the band paused and glasses stilled, I stepped onto a low platform, raising my flute. "I have an announcement," I said, my voice clear despite the knot in my throat. "Ethan and I are expecting a baby." The words carried my hope, fragile but defiant, into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's smile froze, her eyes widening with shock, then narrowing with something colder, disapproval. Lindsay's glass halted mid-air, her lips curling into a sneer as she muttered to a guest. My father advanced, his face a storm of rage. "A child with that man!" He roared, his voice slicing through the crowd. "You're no longer my daughter. You're out of this family, and the will." Gasps erupted, whispers rippling like wildfire. Ethan's grip tightened, his jaw set, but I stood firm. Their words a blade I'd felt before, but refused to let break me. Their rejection wasn't new, but its raw cruelty in front of everyone laid bare their need to control. The trust fund, their lies, their power over my future, it all clicked into place. My grandfather's lessons of strength surged through me, drowning out their venom. I wasn't just fighting for Ethan or our child, I was fighting for my own legacy. My hand found the gift in my purse, a small velvet box wrapped with purpose. I'd prepared it that afternoon, fueled by years of their deceit, a silent declaration I wasn't ready to voice aloud, but couldn't keep inside. I moved to the gift table, the crowd parting like a sea, their eyes heavy with curiosity and judgment. My father's glare burned into me, but I met it without flinching. I set the box down, its soft thud louder than the music in my ears. "Happy birthday, Mother," I said, my voice steady, edged with steel. The words were for me a severance of their hold. I turned, took Ethan's arm, and walked out, the night air sharp against my skin. Each step fueled my resolve, a fire kindled by their betrayal and my grandfather's truth. As we reached the car, the party's lights faded behind us, the hum of voices resuming as if nothing had changed. But I had. The gift wasn't just a gesture, it was my stand, a promise to myself and my unborn child. I didn't know how they'd react when they opened it, but I knew I was ready for whatever came next. We drove into the darkness, my heart steady with the strength I'd only begun to claim. An hour after I left, my phone started buzzing non-stop. The screen lit up with missed calls and texts, my father's name flashing repeatedly. I ignored them, my fingers trembling as I clutched the steering wheel, the weight of the velvet box I'd left behind lingering in my mind. Ethan reached over, his hand steady on mine. "You did what you needed to," he said softly. But the storm was just beginning. Back at my parents' house, the party had unraveled. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, later told me she'd seen my father and mother rush to the gift table after I walked out, their faces pale as they tore open the small velvet box. Inside was my grandfather's heirloom ring, its gold glinting under the fairy lights, and a folded letter in my handwriting. The note was brief, but sharp. I know about the trust fund, $1 million, and the 500,000 you've already taken. Their hands shook as they read it, the crowd's chatter fading as their panic became impossible to hide. Mrs. Carter overheard my mother gasp. How does she know, while my father muttered, "This can't get out"? Their calls came fast and frantic. My phone vibrated with my father's voice, his tone shifting from anger to desperation. "Sabrina, we need to talk," he pleaded in a voicemail. "This is a misunderstanding." My mother's message was softer, almost tearful. "Please come back. We can fix this." I stared at the screen, their words hollow against years of their control and lies. I typed a single reply to both. Too late. Then I silenced my phone, my resolve hardening. Ethan watched me, his eyes proud but worried. "They'll lash out," he warned. I nodded, knowing he was right. The next morning, the backlash hit. My best friend Kristen called me at dawn, her voice urgent. "Sabrina, you need to see this," she said, sending screenshots from a local community group on social media. My parents had posted a scathing message painting me as a greedy, ungrateful daughter who'd betrayed them for money. Sabrina demanded her grandfather's trust fund, turning her back on family, it read. My mother added a comment. "She's always been selfish, chasing wealth over loyalty." Lindsay chimed in, calling me a disgrace who abandoned us. The post spread like wildfire, neighbors and strangers piling on with their own judgments. "How could she do this to her parents?" one wrote. "Entitled brat," another sneered. I scrolled through the vitriol, my chest tightening. Kristen's voice broke through my haze. "They're lying to save face," she said. "Everyone at the party saw your father's outburst. They know he disowned you first." Mrs. Carter had apparently spread the word, whispering to neighbors about my parents' panic when they opened the gift. Another guest, Mr. Thompson, told Kristen he'd seen my father shove the letter into his pocket, his face red with fury. The truth was trickling out, but the online attacks stung, each word a fresh wound. I wanted to fight back to expose their theft of half the trust fund, but Ethan urged caution. "They're digging their own grave," he said, pulling me close. "Let the truth do the work." Kristen agreed, promising to keep an eye on the gossip and rally our friends. She'd already texted a few neighbors, reminding them of my parents' history of control, how they'd pressured me to marry someone worthy of their status, how they'd dismissed Ethan's dreams. Her words were gaining traction, a small countercurrent to their lies. By evening, the online storm had grown. My parents doubled down, posting again about my disloyalty and claiming I'd fabricated the trust fund story to smear them. The irony burned. They were the ones who'd hidden my grandfather's legacy, siphoning off $500,000 for their own use. I thought of Mr. Grayson's warning about their control, and my letter's blunt accusation felt like the first crack in their facade. I didn't regret leaving it, but I hadn't expected this vicious retaliation. Sitting on our couch, I felt the weight of their betrayal settle deeper, but with Ethan beside me and Kristen's fierce support, I wasn't alone. The neighbors' whispers, the party's witnesses, the truth in that letter, it was all building towards something I couldn't yet see. I wasn't the greedy daughter they painted. I was fighting for my child, my future, and the legacy they tried to steal. As I set my phone down, a new strength took root, ready for whatever they'd throw next. 6 months later, my life had taken a new shape. Ava, our daughter, came into the world on a crisp March morning, her tiny cries filling our small Salt Lake City apartment with a joy I'd never known. Ethan stood by my side, his eyes bright with pride as he held her, whispering promises of a future we'd build together. The pain of my family's betrayal. Jeffrey, Susan, and Lindsay still lingered, their vicious social media attacks a fresh scar. But in Ava's face, I saw a reason to keep fighting, not just for us, but for the legacy they'd tried to steal. Ethan's family became our anchor. His mother Diane arrived with homemade casseroles, her warm hugs a balm against the coldness of my own parents. His father Robert spent weekends fixing our creaky furniture, his quiet strength, a reminder of what family could be. Daniel, Ethan's younger brother, brought laughter playing peekaboo with Ava and teasing us about our cluttered nursery. Their support wrapped us in a safety I hadn't felt since my grandfather's days, giving me the courage to face the battle ahead. I'd hired a lawyer, Ms. Barbara Klein, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for taking on tough cases. Kristen had recommended her, praising her tenacity after seeing her win a dispute for a mutual friend. In her sleek downtown office, Barbara laid out the truth about the trust fund. "Your parents withdrew $500,000, she said, sliding documents across her desk. "The original $1 million fund was meant for you upon having a child, but they siphoned half, claiming management fees. It's illegal." My stomach churned, their greed laid bare in black and white. Barbara's voice was firm. "We can sue to recover it, Sabrina. It's your right." The decision wasn't easy. Suing my parents meant dragging our family's ugliness into court, exposing their lies to the world. But the trust was Ava's future, my grandfather's gift to us, and I couldn't let their theft stand. Kristen, ever my rock, sat with me over coffee, urging me forward. "They've already smeared you online," she said, her eyes fierce. "This is your chance to set the record straight." Ethan nodded, cradling Ava. "We're with you, no matter what," he said. Their faith steadied me, pushing me toward a choice I knew I had to make. A week later, Jeffrey reached out, not directly but through Barbara. He'd called her office, his voice dripping with indignation, claiming I was greedy for pursuing the trust. "Sabrina's tearing this family apart over money," he told her, accusing me of ingratitude and betrayal. Barbara shut him down, her tone icy. "Your daughter's defending her child's future," she said. "You broke the law, Mr. Allen. This isn't about greed, it's about justice." When she relayed the conversation, I felt a surge of gratitude. Barbara wasn't just my lawyer, she was my shield, cutting through their manipulations with a clarity I'd struggled to find. The online attacks hadn't stopped. My parents and Lindsay kept posting their words, venomous, painting me as a selfish daughter who'd fabricated lies for profit. Neighbors who'd witnessed the party, Mrs. Carter and Mr. Thompson, started pushing back, sharing the truth about my father's outburst and the letter's revelation. But the damage was done. My name was tangled in their lies, and I knew a lawsuit would stir the hornet's nest further. Still, I couldn't back down. Ava deserved better, and so did I. Late one night, as Ava slept and Ethan worked on a new recipe in our kitchen, I sat with Barbara's documents, the numbers glaring up at me. $500,000 stolen, half of what my grandfather intended for my family. I thought of his stories, his belief in standing tall against those who'd take what's yours. The lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity after years of their control. I signed the papers, my hand steady, and called Barbara the next morning. "File it," I said, my voice firm. "I'm ready." Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Ethan's catering business was growing, Diane and Robert's support unwavering, and Daniel's goofy visits kept us grounded. Kristen checked in daily, her updates on the community's shifting opinions, a reminder that truth was slowly winning. The lawsuit loomed, a daunting step into a fight I didn't want, but couldn't avoid. As I held Ava, her tiny hand curling around my finger, I felt a fire ignite. This was for her, for us, for the legacy my parents thought they could bury. 9 months after the party, I faced my parents in court. The Salt Lake City courtroom was cold, its polished wood and stern air a stark contrast to the chaos of my mother's birthday. I sat beside Barbara, her calm presence anchoring me as I watched Jeffrey and Susan across the room. Their faces were drawn eyes avoiding mine, a far cry from the commanding figures who'd disowned me. Lindsay sat behind them, her expression unreadable. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, his steady warmth reminding me why I was here, for Ava, for our future, for the truth. Barbara had built an airtight case. She presented evidence of the trust fund $1 million meant for me when I had a child and the $500,000 my parents had siphoned off. Bank records, emails, and Mr. Grayson's testimony laid bare their theft, each document a nail in their defense. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, listened as Barbara detailed their management fees, a flimsy excuse for greed. My parents' lawyer stammered, offering weak denials, but the truth was undeniable. When the gavel fell, the ruling was clear. Jeffrey and Susan were to repay the stolen $500,000, plus legal fees, a crushing financial blow. The courtroom victory was only half the story. Barbara had uncovered their social media posts, vicious lies calling me greedy and ungrateful, and submitted them as evidence of defamation. The judge agreed, ordering the posts be made public to show their malice. Within days, the news spread across Salt Lake City's tight-knit community. Neighbors like Mrs. Carter and Mr. Thompson, who'd witnessed the party, shared the court's findings, their whispers turning into a chorus. My parents' reputation, once polished by wealth and status, crumbled. Invitations to galas dried up, and their charity board positions vanished. Jeffrey's business contacts grew distant, and Susan's social circle shrank to a handful of loyalists. The fallout hit them hard. Kristen, ever vigilant, sent me screenshots of local forums where former friends called my parents hypocrites, their lies exposed by the court's ruling. They acted so superior, but they stole from their own daughter, one post read. Another neighbor wrote, "I saw Jeffrey's rage that night. Sabrina didn't deserve that." The public shaming wasn't my goal, but it felt like justice, a reckoning for the pain they'd inflicted. Ethan and I watched the updates roll in, Ava sleeping peacefully in her crib, unaware of the storm her existence had sparked. Then came Lindsay's letter. It arrived at our apartment, her handwriting shaky on the envelope. "Sabrina," it began, "I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong to join their attacks. I want to meet Ava, be her aunt." Her words were soft, a plea for forgiveness, but they rang hollow. I remembered her sneers at the party, her cruel comments online, her silence when I needed a sister. I showed the letter to Ethan, who frowned. "She's only sorry because they lost," he said. Kristen, over coffee, was blunter. "She's covering her tracks now that they're exposed." Their words echoed my own heart. I wasn't ready to forgive, not after the betrayal. I met Lindsay at a quiet cafe, Ava in my arms as a reminder of what mattered. She looked smaller, her usual confidence gone, her eyes pleading as she spoke. "I didn't know they took the money," she said, voice breaking. "Please let me be part of your life." I took a deep breath, my resolve unshaken. "You chose their side, Lindsay," I said, my tone firm but calm. "You don't get to rewrite that now. Ava deserves better than a family who'd tear us down." Her face fell, but I felt no regret. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about protecting my daughter, my peace. Walking away, I felt lighter. The lawsuit had restored what was mine, not just the money, but my voice, my strength. My parents' downfall wasn't my doing. They'd built their own ruin with lies and greed. Diane and Robert, Ethan's parents, welcomed us home with warm smiles, Daniel playing with Ava as we shared the news. Barbara called later, confirming the funds would be transferred soon enough to secure Ava's future. Kristen texted, "You did it. They can't touch you now." As I held Ava, her tiny laughter filling our home, I knew I'd made the right choice. The past was done, and my family, Ethan, Ava, and those who truly stood by us, was all I needed. A year after the courtroom, my life was everything I'd fought for. The house came first. It wasn't extravagant, but it was ours, a 2-story brick home in a quiet Salt Lake City neighborhood. Walking through the bare rooms with Ethan, I imagined Ava's laughter echoing down the hallway and sunlight spilling across the kitchen where he would cook. Signing those papers meant more than ownership. It meant freedom from the chains my parents had tried to hold over me. Ethan poured his energy into a dream long deferred. With help from the restored trust, he opened Brooks Table, a restaurant downtown. His menu mixed comfort and elegance, every dish crafted with care. I watched him work in the open kitchen, sweat on his brow and joy in his smile as critics praised his vision and customers returned week after week. What Jeffrey had once dismissed as instability had become a thriving success. My career blossomed alongside his. At the firm, I rose to senior manager entrusted with events that drew national attention. Colleagues respected my creativity and resilience not as the daughter of anyone, but as Sabrina Allen in my own right. For the first time, I felt defined not by family shadows but by achievements I had carved myself. Ava was the center of it all. By her first birthday, she toddled across the living room, curls bouncing as she reached for Robert's handmade rocking horse or laughed at Daniel's silly games. Diane filled our freezer with casseroles and our hearts with warmth. The Brooks family wrapped us in the kind of support I had never known, proving that true family is chosen through love, not dictated by blood. Across town, Jeffrey and Susan shrank into isolation. The judgment against them lingered. The social circles they once dominated no longer welcomed them. Invitations stopped arriving, charity boards moved on, and whispers about their deceit spread quietly but firmly. Lindsay stayed close to them, though her attempts to reach me felt more like regret than repentance. I didn't reply. Boundaries, I had learned, protect peace. There were moments I questioned whether I should forgive, but I remembered the public cruelty, the theft, the years of control. Forgiveness without change is surrender. Ava deserved better than to grow up under the weight of their bitterness. I chose instead to build a world where love was steady and trust was unbroken. The lessons were clear. Prejudice poisons. My parents' obsession with wealth and status blinded them to Ethan's worth and nearly cost me a life of joy. Lies corrode. Their theft of the trust fund didn't just rob me financially, it betrayed the very bond my grandfather hoped to leave behind. Yet truth liberates. By standing firm in my values, I discovered that happiness isn't granted by family name, but earned by living with integrity. Now in the evenings, Ethan and I sit on the porch, watching Ava chase fireflies across the yard. We talk about the future, new recipes, new events, maybe a second restaurant someday. Sometimes he squeezes my hand and whispers, "We made it." And I know he's right. My grandfather's promise was never just about money. It was about strength, about never letting others define my worth. I see his lesson in every smile from Ava, in every plate Ethan serves, in every step I take free of the past. Happiness, I've learned, is built daily by choosing honesty over deceit, compassion over judgment, and courage over silence. That is the life I fought for, and that is the life I will protect.